In this video, I'm sharing my process for making modular floor tiles, which can help you build a variety of levels more efficiently. Hey guys, Adam here from Pixel Mystique. I make games and I help others to learn game dev. Subscribe now to get game dev tips, tutorials, and inspiration. And hit that bell icon to get notified whenever I upload new videos. I've been experimenting with a modular level design system since I'm working on an isometric action roguelike game. In case you're curious, you can check out my devlogs for the game right here and in the description below. As I mentioned in my previous video, since I'm the only one creating 3D assets for this project, it's important for me to prioritize efficiency while also considering my game design rules. Here's some considerations that I have made. First of all, the 3D assets must be quick to produce, hence I chose the low poly style. Next, the 3D assets must be reusable and look good in every angle because we're going to rotate them around to create variety as we place them throughout the level. And then finally, some parts of the 3D assets should be adjustable so that we can create even more varieties from that same asset. There are many ways you can accomplish all this. In this video, I'm covering everything that I've learned so far based on my own experiments and trial and error as I've come up with my own workflow. So I'll walk through the modeling and UV mapping workflows in Blender, and then from there we'll move on and I'll import the assets into Unity and continue to set up all the different materials and start placing the floor tiles to lay it out and form the level. This tutorial is a multi-part series as we have a lot of different steps to go through to complete the entire level. So I recommend that you check out the other videos in this playlist to understand my thought process and my workflow better. You can find the playlist up here and in the description below. Okay, so I've opened up a new Blender file right here and I'm using Blender 2.8, which is the latest version as of this recording. So first things first, I'm going to get rid of this cube, which is the default cube that will appear whenever you have a new Blender file open. And then I'm going to switch to the top view and then create a 2x2 plane. I've used meters as a default unit. So let's add the plane right now. And if you don't have a menu right here open that shows the dimensions, just press N. And we can see right here is already 2x2. That's great. Now we're going to create a cube and adjust the size accordingly. So we're going to create another cube on top and let's zoom in a bit. It's overlapping right now so you can't see it, but let's set the size to be 1.8 by 1.8 and then thickness would be 0.1. This is all based on my experiments, so the dimension has been tested a few times already. And then for optimization's sake, we need to remove the bottom part of this cube's face. So to do that, we'll select the cube and then enter edit mode. Make sure we are using the face selector, select the face, and let's remove it. This is for optimization purposes. So later on, we're going to move this up and it's going to overlap once we join with this plane. And we don't want that because graphically, you're going to have a weird overlap. And also from a performance standpoint, it's not going to be good. So let's move the cube up. Exit edit mode. Move it about 0.05 and then we'll want to set the cube's pivot point to the 3D cursor. So right click on the cube, set origin, and then origin to 3D cursor. This will ensure that it is aligned with the plane's origin pivot point, which will make things easier later on once we move things around. Because next we're going to duplicate this and duplicate them 3 times and place them around the original copy. So these two selected. From top view, Shift D. Move them across 2 meters. And then let's do the same thing and select both of them. Shift D. Move them up 2 meters. So I'm gonna check them real quick. Looks good. All right. Now we need to join the 4 planes together. So select the 4 planes. And then if you enter edit mode, when you toggle to vertex mode, you're gonna see that there's extra vertices all around. So when you select this one, for example, if you enter X-ray mode, this is good to see things are overlapping. So right now we can see there's actually 2 vertices overlapping right at this point. So we'll need to clean this up and we're gonna merge the extra vertices. So let's quickly do that. Merge at center. This one right here in the middle also needs to be merged because there's 4 vertices overlapping. The reason why we do this is to make things more efficient in terms of performance. So the less vertices we have, the cleaner things are, and there's less prone for errors, especially when you do 3D characters and you start to move them, you know, when you create animations. So that's all done. All our vertices are merged, and I think we can delete this one. Or no, we'll leave it there for future proofing purposes. Now, before we move forward, let's just keep things clean and organized. And also, it could be cumbersome when you want to select multiple objects in Blender easily. So I would recommend that we use the collections features so we can group objects together without necessarily joining them. So select all the objects right here, these 5 things, the 4 cubes plus a plane, and then right click, or you can use M as a hotkey, move to collection, and rather than using scene or collection, you're going to use new collection and then give it a name. So any name will do. Maybe this is I'll name this floor tile 0. Maybe for sake of clarity, template. Yep. You'll see why I do this later on. So now on the right hand side, you can see that these objects are now under floor tile _0 _ template. So if you need to select them at any given time, rather than doing this and holding shift, or doing this and accidentally selecting something nearby, what you can do is right click here and then select all objects. And then you can move them around easily or edit them. So what we want to do is create a duplicate for this and put this somewhere far away. I don't know where it went. Let's see, zoom out, and along the x-axis, let's put this right here. The reason why we're doing this is so that we can treat this Blender file like a factory. We're going to create templates, and depending on what situation you're in, you might want to create more templates depending on which step of the process you don't want to repeat. So for example, rather than me creating these 4 cubes all over again and then position them and all that and joining the 4 planes, I already have this all set up and I made copies of it. So if I need to then edit them, just duplicate that and then edit the duplicate rather than creating things from scratch. So another problem you might notice is that now that you've selected everything here, they're now under the same collections. So what we can do is, I'm going to delete all the objects. what I'm going to do instead is right click on the collection itself and then duplicate collection. And then before I do anything, what I can do is rename this accordingly. So this one would be floor tile 0. This one would be the template, and then let's select this and move this template outside. Like so. Awesome. Right. Let's zoom in again. And I think this one. Yep, it's selecting the right objects. What we want to do now is merge the vertices of the extra edges, because in this variation we're gonna treat these 4 divisions as one. So we don't want this division, just to add a little bit more optimization to our final output model. So let's merge this. Merge at last. This one. Merge at last. And then this one as well. Merge at last. And double check. Let's make sure they're not overlapping. They should have only one vertice. Yep. 1 and 1. Okay, good. Last thing we need to do is then clean this up a bit. For some reason it doesn't do that. Hold shift, I think, and you get the option to merge last or merge first. So it's basically merging the last vertex that I selected. So this is going to merge here. That's what it means by merge last. Awesome. So double check. Yep, these are all single vertices. Single vertex, sorry. Okay, cool. So if you want, you can also turn this into a template, just because you might be duplicating this and using this across many times as you edit different variations based on this template. So let's rename this be floor tile 1 template. And then we're gonna select everything here. Oh no, we're gonna duplicate this collection. We're gonna move the template away, just as we did with the previous template 0. Like that. Now we have this one. Just for cleaning things up, I like to call it I like to remove the word template so that I know that this is the working version. So just to clear things up, this is a 4x4 floor tile, and I've determined based on game design rules and through a lot of playtesting in my prototype that the player should have minimum space of 4 meters by 4 meters. So that's why, if you're curious to know why I have these kind of measurements, is because of that. It's an action game, so that you're gonna move around and probably dodge, or you're gonna block, you're gonna shoot. So you need that space. So the minimum unit I'm gonna have is this amount. Also, because I'm doing probably using some sort of script to generate procedural levels, so these tiles will be the minimum value that I'll have. So these are the basic tile for my game. So there's no such thing as a smaller floor tile than this. Although technically this cube, each of these cubes are one floor tile, but in the grand scheme of my project, in my game, I've decided that this is the minimum amount. It should consist of 4 tiles, or at least the size must be equivalent to 4 tiles. And if you guys don't understand that, you'll probably see more of this later on once you move on to Unity, perhaps in a future video. By the way, if you're looking to buy some low poly assets, I would recommend you check out the packs made by Synty Studios. I really like the way they set up their environments. They have some really good details on their models, and they cover a variety of genres. Links in the description below. Okay, so now we can consider this as one variation of the floor tile, and let's say this is the perfect one, and no scratches, no damage, no chips anywhere. So to prepare this, we'll have to start joining it before we proceed with the next steps. To ensure there's no changes and funny business happening with the scales once we merge this object, because right now the scale of these cubes are a bit smaller because we changed their dimensions. What you want to do is select each cube first, then only select the plane. I recommend using the hierarchy for this, simply because selecting it like this, you can sometimes accidentally select the plane in between rather than selecting it last. So to be safe, I think you just select it here like this using the hierarchy, and then start joining them. So now it's one object, scales 1, 1, 1, all's good. The other thing now is that we want to set this origin or pivot point to be right here in the middle of this entire object. So what you can do is right click, set origin to center of mass or surface, and then it'll snap right there. It moved the origin or pivot point to the center. And then we want this to go to 0, 0, 0 coordinates, so that when we import it into Unity, based on my testing, I want everything to be aligned at 0, 0, 0. So we can easily move that by snapping it to move the selection to cursor. So now it's moved right in the middle. But we have another thing to adjust, which is the height. Because if we leave it as this, when I use my random procedural generation script to tile these tiles, to lay out these tiles randomly across the entire level, I don't want to keep adjusting the coordinates of the height. So what I want to do is to make sure that whenever this object is spawned, the default placement should be this floor tile top surface should be here at the origin, because when we have player characters and enemy characters also on top of the floor tiles, we don't want them to spawn and hitting, you know, inside the floor tile or like landing somewhere here at the bottom of the floor tile. So we want to make sure that this is the surface that's touching them. So if it sounds complicated, it's because later on you'll see in future videos as I move and spawn things around in Unity, I want things to kind of snap and not overlap each other. So to do that, we got to move this entire object lower, like so. Oh, I think it's not set accordingly. I think it's 0.5 for some reason. Okay, once we have that, now we can right click once again, set origin to 3D cursor. And now the origin point or the pivot point will be set up here. I can switch off the X-ray so that it's clearer. And it's in the middle of the entire object, which is perfect for what we have in mind once we start using this in a modular way and lay it out in Unity. Okay, so we have the first variation done. We're gonna hide this floor tile 1 collection, and then we're gonna start create more duplicates. The reason why we're hiding that floor tile is because we want to keep using the center origin of Blender, so that we align everything just like how we align a pivot point or the origin point, and this will keep our assets consistent. And it's especially useful once you start using it in conjunction with a procedural generation script like I will be doing in my game. So we had our template set out earlier and we duplicated them. So now, because I just want to modify and create a variation base of this floor tile number 1 template. We're going to duplicate this again, and then only then we're going to modify that copy. So right click on the collection and duplicate it, rename it. This is to make sure we don't get confused. And right click, select all objects for that template, floor tile number 2, and then let's move it aside. Okay, now we can play around these floor tiles, and what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how you can create a variation. I'm going to show you one of the most easiest way to create a variation, and because there are 4 squares here that represent a floor tile, we can select this one right here right now, and we can rotate this across the z-axis, maybe just a little bit like this. Let's check the top view. And it's giving the impression that this floor tile has been moved, maybe because a giant enemy has stepped on it and it's moved a bit, you know, the aftermath of a combat. So that's already looking different than this floor tile. Another trick you can do is potentially removing one of these floor tiles. So maybe the one next to it was completely gone, so we can delete this. And then the final thing that I've experimented with was to create cracks on the other floor tiles. So to do that, we're going to use a loop cut. So select the other floor tile, maybe let's use this one. So go into edit mode, and then you press Ctrl Alt to get the loop cut, and then you'll see this highlighted line right here, and this is going to cut this way. We're going to cut both sides, and then using the scroll wheel we can add more loops, and then left click to reposition it. Let's see, I'm going to do one right about here. It doesn't really matter. No need for accurate snapping and all that for the effect that I want to achieve. And let's say we add maybe another 4 here. Looks good. Alright, so then we are now going to start moving things. I like to do this from top view. And box select. Because for my game, the camera is quite far away from objects, so they may not be able to see much. So I like to do some variations that's quite apparent. And maybe we can move these around here. We can switch on X-ray mode to make this easier. Can merge these vertices as well and play around with the shape and like carve it out basically. And sometimes you might want to make sure that there are no weird shapes going on, so you can use a knife tool and Yeah, that's much better. And just add more edges and really literally just cut through some of the surfaces. But you guys get what I mean. So from here already you can see that's like a chip. And if you're really particular, let's maybe add a little bit more by moving this around. Like so. Let me move this down a bit. Yeah. I'm pretty happy with that. You can keep editing this to your heart's content, but basically play around with how many edge loops that you have, and then maybe you can play around with the knife tool and start making sure that there are no weird shapes going on. Like I think this one right here, maybe to be safe, you can just add another, using the knife tool, we can add another edge loop. Sorry, another edge right there. Yeah, OCD is starting to kick in. Oops. Alright, so with that, you can even now start duplicating this and maybe create another template, another collection template. So duplicate that template, rename it as usual to make sure that you don't get confused, and then select all. And then move it to the side so that you know, oops, looks like I missed something. Let's do that again. I accidentally selected the other plane as well. It happens sometimes. Put this aside. And then maybe play with rotations. Maybe this one is being rotated as well. Maybe it has two loose tiles, and then you can keep playing on, and maybe if you want to restart fresh, just duplicate the original floor template one and then modify that one using either rotation of the tiles, removing a tile, or the carving of the tile using the knife tool and also the edge loop tool. And once you're done with the variations, you want to repeat the process that we had earlier and duplicate this. Put it to the middle right here, and just like prepare it just like the floor tile template here. Make sure you do all the other steps and align the origin point or pivot point, and that should be it. Okay, so in the next video, we'll look at the process of UV unwrapping and applying materials to our 3D models. If you want to download the project files from all my tutorials, you can do that by supporting me on Patreon. You can use my entire library of assets for your projects, and you can participate in polls to vote on which topics I should cover in future videos. Occasionally, you can even vote on certain design decisions for my game project. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters. It is due to their generosity that I'm able to make more games and more videos like this one. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and consider subscribing for more game dev tips, tutorials, and inspiration. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.